Hi, Local Haircut Denier here to tell you about my favorite music gear of the past year. Now, in talking about my favorite music gear of the past year, which I like saying it rhymes, we're not going to be talking necessarily about things that all came out this year, but gear that was new to me this year and that I thought was noteworthy and merited sharing. None of this video is sponsored. There is one piece of gear, and it's the first one that we'll talk about, kind of spoiling it here. It's this guitar pedal, the Walrus Audio Lure, that I did get at a discount, but otherwise everything in this video I picked up, on my own. I didn't reach out to a company or get a discount. And lastly, as both an acknowledgement and maybe a bit of a disclaimer, I know that I'm privileged to be in a position where I can be making YouTube videos and sharing a bunch of cool music gear and talking about it with a bunch of people. But I want to add that I don't really have the money to go out and buy every single new synthesizer or drum machine or effect pedal out there, much as I might like to. And this isn't about to turn into a Patreon pitch. I don't have one. Instead, I wanted to invite people to let me know this past year what's some gear that really resonated with you. I, of course, will have my own limited perspective. I'd be interested in hearing what other people liked. I would also be interested in, hearing what people disliked, but it's always fun to have a positive discussion too. Anyway, we're going to start by talking about this guitar pedal, the Walrus Audio Lure. So the Lure is an effects pedal that is built around making an ambient texture. So we've got this sound coming out of the OP1, and I'm going to turn on the Lure, and you have this blindingly bright white LED, and now it sounds like this. Ooh, outer space ambiance. I think it's actually, they're going for more of a mystical forest nature kind of feel, judging from the really lovely art on it. But Lure's thing, and I have a longer in-depth video of it, which I'll link right up, I think right up here, which goes over it more. But Lure's thing is, they call it a reverse soundscape generator. So you can have things like reverse delay or reverse reverb, and just different ways of making your sounds kind of full and sound more like they exist in this dramatic, impossible space. And it's really that ability to make these beautiful, lush sounds that has made Lure one of my favorite effects and just one of my favorite pieces of gear that I've used this year. A couple of things to keep in mind. It is unfortunately in mono, not in stereo. And it does take a little bit of time to memorize things and wrap your head around it. A consequence of a guitar pedal being able to do more is that it inherently becomes a little bit more convoluted in having to memorize things, learn shortcuts and what have you. But even with, just turning knobs, seeing what you get, you can get something that's really beautiful. Let's go on to the next category, which is going to be my favorite piece of vintage gear. My favorite piece of vintage gear that I got this year is the Casio SK1. So I haven't kept it any kind of secret that I love these old, goofy, cheaper toy keyboards. And what makes the Casio SK1 fun compared to the Casio MT68, which I've had for a few years and love, is that this one uses sampling instead of synthesis. Now, there is some synthesis in here. I'll talk about that in a sec. And like with the Lure, there is a video I've made on it, which I'll put right up here, I think. It's very difficult to judge where exactly I should be pointing. But I think the charms of the SK1 are first found in its lo-fi samples. And the fact that it has some features that for these kinds of keyboards are actually impressive. It has portamento. You can't adjust the portamento time, but it is cool to have portamento. It has a pretty simplistic sequencer. If I go down to record and I'll type in, let's see. When I go back to play, I can press where it says one key play. And it'll play back through what I've recorded. So you can slowly key in a more complicated pattern and then play it back using those keys. I mentioned the samples. On all of these old keyboards, I always love the flute sound. Forgot that portamento was on. This one's no exception. Love it. There's also a great brass sound. Unfortunately, the keys are a little too small for me to comfortably play anything like that. You do have little drum tracks. To play along with. And I mentioned there's synthesis in here. It's a basic additive style synthesis. But you can still get a nice little organ-like sound. And with these old keyboards, it's always fun to send them through effects. I have a little reverb pedal here, and we'll put it into mode 6. The big downsides to old keyboards like these, and the SK1 is no exception, is that first of all, there's some tech limitations. In this case, you only have 4 voices. And then there's also the fact that, they're older and there's just things that are more likely maybe to stop working. I can say from experience, having had these, they're sturdier than they might look, but they really don't look very sturdy. But that's the SK1. We're going to go now to the next category, which is my favorite piece of all-in-one music production gear. So up next is the Dirty Wave Mate, or I've been told that the creator calls it the M8, but is okay with people calling it the Mate. If I'm wrong about that, please let me know. I just like calling it the Mate because I think the name sounds cute. But the Dirty Wave Mate is a little tracker in an older style of music creation, and it is contained in this thing that is so tiny. Hold on a moment. For comparison, here is my Game Boy. It is so tiny. But within here is everything you would need to make a full track. You have different kind of synthesis engines, you have a sampler, and you have a means of arranging everything to be played when you want it to be played. The benefit of a tracker is that you gain a lot of per step control, so I can key in not only a note per step, but also an effect, and I could change what instrument, what patch or sample is being used for it. So the fact that you can, control everything so granularly, it's kind of like having really fine automation envelopes, I guess. And kind of on that topic, the synthesis engines in here all sound really nice, as do the effects. What you're hearing right now is called Macro Synth. It is based on braids by Mutable Instruments and is just super versatile. And, everything that you heard was either drum samples or the synthesis engines built into here. So it's robust, it's very small, travels very well. Obviously, that is all a great strength. The thing that gave this an edge over its competition, which was the SP404 Mark II, which, by the way, still an awesome sampler. The thing that gave this the edge is the fact that you don't actually have to get it in the official hardware. So you can buy a small microcontroller called a Teensy, I think it's Teensy 4.1, that can essentially be a Dirty Wave Mate. And it is, the last time I checked, it was like $50. And you can plug it into your computer and go on to Dirty Wave's website, and they have a page that you can use to actually view what would be the screen here. And you've got an entire self-contained modern take on a retro form of music production. It's called Mate Headless, and it's something I would recommend looking up if you're interested in the Dirty Wave Mate, but don't feel like buying one, which I understand. And if you would like to learn more, I'm still working on a review for this. I'm sorry I've been dragging my feet on it, but you will find my video sort of introducing it right up here. And we'll move on to our final category, which is my favorite synth of the past year. And finally, my favorite synth of this past year is right here. It is the enormous Casio CZ5000. This thing is so cool and so flexible. You can get such a fun array of sounds. It is a huge, flexible synthesizer. It has a chorus effect as well. Sounds really cool. And as with everything I've talked about here, I do have a larger video on the Casio CZ5000 if you're interested, right up here. I'm really confident that I'm pointing at the right spot. I'm posing like this for the YouTube thumbnail. So those were some of my favorite things from the past year, and moving into 2023, I'm excited to see what shows up on this channel, be it music I've made, a piece of gear I try out, some other third category of thing. But all in all, it's been a fun year for me on YouTube, both using it to, watch videos, but also getting to use it to create videos and have short little connections with people in the comments. Like I mentioned earlier, if you've used some gear this year that really stood out to you, even if it wasn't something that was new to you this year, but just something that was like a continuing favorite, shout it out in the comments, let us know. And I'd love to have some kind of conversation about, what are recommendations? Maybe even what are things to steer yourself away from? And most of all, I want to thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you're open to it and haven't already, please consider leaving a like, hitting subscribe, and thanks so much. I look forward to seeing you in the new year. Until then, bye.